Hey, welcome back. Today's episode is gonna be a little heavy. Content warning for child sexual abuse. I won't go into graphic detail, but it's still difficult to hear, so you should be prepared for that. Nation media recently broke a story about a man who was abusing his four daughters. I want to talk about that article and a second article in the same story titled, and I quote, Soko ni Kubwa, yet he chose his daughters. What kind of father, what kind of man, end quote. The caption on the image reads, Dad from hell, end quote. We need to move away from the writing and the thinking that portrays men, abusive men, as singularly evil. Oh, they were a monster and so on. They are not monsters. They are not from hell. And no, they are not singularly evil. They are normal men. Let's talk about the global rates of child sexual abuse, which I will refer to as CSA going forward. Keep in mind, as you see the figures, that this is a crime that is heavily underreported, and experts maintain that it is more widespread than previously estimated. Those figures, whatever they are much higher. I also found out that in only about 5 to 15% of the cases is there credible evidence or genital injuries consistent with the child being penetrated. And so for a system obsessed with evidence in order for a case to proceed, it means even if the abuse is exposed and there is no evidence, then the case is dead in the water. The perpetrators have no case to answer. According to the CDC, which is the Center for Disease Control in the US, 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 20 boys in the US are victims of child sexual abuse. One global study found the highest rates of CSA in the world in Africa at 34.4%. That is just a little over 3 in 10 children in Africa. We're talking about millions of children globally. Millions of children. Approximately 90%, a whopping 90% of CSA is committed by someone known to the child or a child's family member. So millions of children are abused globally by trusted people and family members, usually men. That's millions of men. I had, and this is anecdotal, I had this one from Jeremy, 46% of children who are abused by their fathers. 47% by their stepfathers. So we're talking only of about 5%, which is not father or stepfather. Using the 34% of children in Africa experience CSA, we're talking about 3 in 10, approximately 3 in 10. We could extrapolate that and say 3 in 10 men in Africa are abusing kids, allowing for that 0.4% to be overlap. 3 in 10. Those are not monsters. They are not psychopaths. They are not from hell. Those millions of men, that 3 in 10 subset, is not made up of monsters and dads from hell. It's normal men. Men we talk to and laugh with in churches and matatus and offices and shops. Normal men. The most normal men. The day we let that sink in and stop trying to make them out to be monsters or singularly evil is the day we start solving the problem. Oh, what kind of man would do this? A normal one? The most normal one. So stop with that. Stop it. A little backstory on the 4 girls and their family. Their father was abusive to their mother, violent, even in their presence. This matters because children who grow up in families where there's domestic violence are at a higher risk of CSA. A man who abuses you will abuse your kids. A man who harms you is harming your kids, will harm your kids. The girl's mother operated a salon right next to their house. Like they lived in the back room and the front room was the salon. So she would be there a lot. This man, their father, would play a movie with the volume really loud, then call one of the girls into his room to abuse her. He'd threaten them if they ever told. One of the girls, Winnie, that's a pseudonym, was 8 years old when the abuse started. He forced her to have an abortion twice. Let's talk about their individual stories. For Joylene, the eldest, who is now 20 years old, it started when she was 14 or 15 years old. He called her to his room, put on a loud movie, and started touching her. When she protested, he threatened to beat her. Other times, he actually beat her. When she tried to resist, he'd say, quote, "Usinipandishe pressure," which means, "Don't raise my pressure." The girls got the message loud and clear because that's what he would say to their mother when beating her. "Usinipandishe pressure." He threatened to throw them out on the streets and said that their mother was nothing without him. He raped Joylene every time schools closed and she went back home. That family has 7 children. At some point, the mother went back to Kitale with the other kids, with the little kids, the boys, and the 3 girls were living just with their father. At this time, Joylene had finished high school. One of their cousins, Jane, came to live with her and her father for a while. Her siblings were in boarding school at the time. He started abusing Jane too. He forced both her and Jane to take abortion pills when they got pregnant. Schools closed, and the other 2 siblings came home. Jolene's father informs her that Winnie, her younger sister, is 2 or 3 months pregnant. He says she's been pregnant the whole time she's been in school. Winnie is the one who was 8 years old when the abuse started. Joylene is shocked because Winnie is only 15 and she assumed he was only abusing her and her cousin Jane. She didn't think he was also abusing her sister. Their father gets abortion pills for Winnie and leaves Joylene to take care of her. I should point out that the cousin had excessive bleeding when she took the abortion pills, but she survived. Around this time, Joylene finds out he's also abusing her sister Pauline, who is 12 years old. Last year is when Joylene found out that he was also abusing their 10-year-old sister, Purity. He abuses them on alternating days, raping them multiple times a night if it's your night. When Joylene finds out about 10-year-old Purity, she confronts him, asks him if the 4 of them are not enough that he has to abuse a child. In response, he threatens to stop paying her university fees and threatens to commit suicide. He had gotten so brazen, he would abuse them even with their mother in another room of the house. So how did it all come out? After years of threatening, beating, and sexually abusing the girls? It all came out because of homophobia, if you can believe it. Winnie was suspended from high school because of lesbianism. She was then ordered to cease all communication with her lesbian partner in crime, except she didn't, and her sister Pauline found out they were still talking and rushed to report it to her father. The abusive father, in a fury, threatened Winnie, who eventually broke and confessed everything that had been happening, everything he'd been doing for years. As soon as their mother found out, she called a local NGO that was paying school fee for one of the girls at 2 a.m., and they rushed the girls to the hospital for examination. Their mother says she had no idea what was happening. She says she regrets not taking her son seriously when he said his father doesn't love him the way he loves Purity. That son is Purity's twin, and Purity is the youngest, the 10-year-old. The twin was talking about the fact that their father would call Purity to his room to watch movies all the time, but not him. The mother says she regrets that. So that's the long and short of it. The full story is on nation.africa. Now let's talk about the article, Soko ni Kubwa. The title infuriated me. Soko ni Kubwa, yet he chose his daughters. What kind of father, what kind of man, end quote. We've talked about this. The CSA numbers are right there. 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 20 boys in the US. 34%, approximately 1 in 3 children in Africa, by largely people known to them, not strangers. Normal men. That's what kind of man is doing this normal men, normal fathers. Soko ni Kubwa had me seeing red. I was so mad. I thought I must be misunderstanding something. So I went down the rabbit hole and found out that Alfred Mutua had said that in response to inappropriate sexual conduct in offices. That's who you quote. Someone talking about Warembo being subjected to harassment in the workplace. A modern day slave trader in the business of trafficking women is who you're going to quote in an article about a man abusing his daughters. Soko ni Kubwa, as if abuse is about failing to understand that there are many women out there for you to chase. As if women are wares in the marketplace for you to choose from. As if abuse is not about power and dominance. How do you quote a man, a modern day slave trader, who has shown zero concern for Kenyan women, Kenyan domestic workers being abused, sexually abused in the UAE? Why do we insist on adding levity to everything? There should be zero levity when we're talking about the abuse that women and children are subjected to. What do you mean, Soko ni Kubwa? As if this abusive father should have gone out there and picked from the women or children who are not his daughters to abuse. Do we imagine that he would have been decent to other women when what gets his engine revving is abuse, control, dominance? This reminds me of people saying, rapists should just find and pay a sex worker so they can what? Rape her? Because what a rapist wants to do is rape. It's not sex they want. And nobody deserves to be raped. Not even the sex workers we have decided as a unit to despise. So this idea that Soko ni Kubwa and this man should have gone out there and chosen from the crowd of Kenyan women is infuriating, ignorant, and exceedingly dangerous. No matter who he chose, he would have raped them. That's the problem. He is an abuser. There is no way around that. What he wants is to abuse. About the abortions. Then there's this insinuation that forcing them to have abortions was also wrong. What? You're going to classify forcing them to have abortions as at the same level of severity as abusing them and threatening them for years? The only good thing he ever did for those girls was getting them abortions. It's unfortunate that it wasn't safe at home type kids, but it could have been so much worse. Few things ruin women's lives as much as childhood pregnancy. Heck, all unwanted pregnancies. We are so problematic as a country. Even in this instance, when abortion is in the best interest of the children, we still find a way to turn our noses up at it. Literally, aside from the quick response to rescue them from their father, the next best thing in this story is their abortions. It's bad enough that they will for the rest of their lives deal with the effects of their father's abuse. Do we seriously think it would have been better if they were saddled with the children to boot? Listen, abortions now, abortions tomorrow, and abortions forever. Abortions on demand now. Leave poor people alone. Towards the end of the article, she talks about the pain the mother of the girls must feel, says her heart breaks for her. Then immediately, after her 2-line commiseration, breaks into criticizing women. Oh, the mothers who knowingly allow the abuse to happen to their daughters, how their failures as parents, and no, economic dependency is no excuse. She says, and here I want to quote, economic dependency cannot justify sacrificing a child's body and soul. There is no poverty more devastating than the spiritual poverty of such a choice, end quote. Let me begin by saying I do not know this woman, the writer, and I do not know her economic background. She says even economic dependency cannot justify letting your child be abused. She says there's no poverty like making the choice to let that happen. Number 1, I do not know why she's bringing up this whole sacrificing your children because of financial dependence, because none of that happened here. Literally none of it. Second, When people talk like this, all I hear is their confession. All they're saying to me is, I don't know what being poor means. Like you have no idea what being poor means. So stop it. If you've never starved, have never not known when next you're going to eat, where you're going to sleep, if you've never lived like that, shut the fuck up. Just stop it. You do not know what it means to be poor. You do not know what it means to be fully dependent on an abusive man. You do not know. So no, you don't get to criticize and advise poor people. Stop talking about that level of poverty and dependency like you know anything about it. You don't. If you did, you would not talk like this. You want to talk about spiritual poverty to starving, homeless people? Or a woman trapped in an abusive relationship? Come on. Stop it. There's an episode of Boston Legal where this homeless man is arraigned in court and charged with cannibalism. He ate a piece of his dead friend. In his defense, Alan Shaw asks the jury if they've ever starved. Starved, not been hungry. Starved. Until you know what it means to be poor and desperate and dependent without options and living daily with that trauma, you do not get to talk about what poor people should and should not do. You do not get to lecture poor people about morality, spiritual or otherwise. You don't. Let's talk about John Chabuchok and the abusive country we live in. Do you remember that guy from the BBC documentary on sexual abuse in tea farms? He was in charge of over 400 women, and if you rejected his advances, you'd get fired. He sexually coerced and raped these women, but because they needed their jobs, they kept coming back. Some even brought their daughters. Until you know what it means to be so poor that you get your child a job where you also get abused. Maybe, don't advise poor people. Go and advise people in your tax bracket with similar middle class problems. Let the poor advise themselves. We are a society that loves to talk down on poor people. We have no shortage of advice and criticism where they're concerned. The capitalist class that owns the companies and the industries are the ones we should be directing this vitriol towards. Instead, we punch down every chance we get. Leave poor people alone, Bana. They're going through enough and don't need your self-righteousness cloaked as advice. Also, suppose it's true, Poor women are allowing their children to be abused by their male partners because of their financial dependency on said men. Say that's true, What exactly are you hoping to accomplish by talking down at them and calling it the worst kind of spiritual poverty? You don't think they know? Do you imagine as you sit at your laptop typing off that you're hitting them with the headlines? If the reason they're doing it is their financial dependence on an abusive partner, should your focus not be on solving the problem of financial dependency, particularly on an abuser? If you care about children as much as you claim to, then the people you need to be directing all of this ire towards is the government. If indeed poor women are having to make this terrible choice, then you need to be calling out the government for not having the kind of social services and support systems that would give poor women other options. If you care about children, you should be talking about social support services, and not just for the children, but also for women caught up in abusive relationships. We need to stop with this punching down. Either punch up at the people with the real power, the ones making the decisions that shape all of our lives, or stop talking and leave poor women alone. Just leave poor women alone. Give them money and support. Otherwise, leave them the hell alone. Go advise your friends. Can we just focus? Focus on the abuser. Can we focus on the abuser? Why must we always find a woman to punch? We have a disturbing habit in this country of trying to balance everything. If we talk about men abusing women, we must also talk about the handful of women abusing men. If we criticize a father for abusing his children, we must also find a reason to criticize the children's mother. We imagine that this shows how fair and balanced and rational we are, how we are not biased. We don't skew on either side. The thing is, though, this attempt at neutrality, where we criticize both sides, is equivalent to siding with the abuser. The abuser is the one who makes the decision to cause harm. Of course, that is who we should be attacking. The writer of this piece says, economic dependency cannot justify sacrificing a child's body and soul. There is no poverty more devastating than the spiritual poverty of such a choice, end quote. Where is that coming from? Where in the story did anyone sacrifice kids? Nowhere. The thing is, we just must find a way to blame women, or the article isn't fair and balanced and rational. The mother in this case called for help at 2 a.m. as soon as she found out. And it is in an article talking about her and her children that you want to punch down on women. Can you imagine what it must be like for this woman who you claim to be heartbroken for? She's reading your article, talking about her kids, then shortly, even women who ABCD. You don't think most mothers blame themselves? Instead of spending every available minute talking about this man and all the millions of men who abuse their children and patriarchy and all our systems that let them get away with it, you want to punch down on women. This neutrality you're going for only serves abusers. Pick a side. I'm going to follow the writer's lead and close with advice. If you can help it, and you have children, don't live with men at all, not even their father. Millions of children are abused by their family members, largely by their fathers. Don't leave them alone in the company of men, especially aggressive men who you know are violent and those who value traditional gender roles and norms and hierarchies. And more practical advice, because quitting men is too big an ask for many. When you're trying to lay the blame somewhere, focus on the abuser who makes the choice to harm and on the system that allows it. Always remember that the men doing this are not monsters or singularly evil. They're just ordinary men. 3 in 10. Ordinary men. The most ordinary men you know. Abusers will abuse. So Soko ni Kubwa is an ignorant thing to say. Even if women present themselves willingly, what he wants is the power to take by force. So Soko ni Kubwa is no solution to the problem of abuse. Men are the problem. Patriarchy is the problem. Soko ni Kubwa is almost a threat to women at this point. Pole sana to those 4 girls, those poor babies, and all the children suffering even now. Pole sana to the adult survivors, not just of childhood sexual abuse, but sexual abuse in general. Nation Media Group Gender Desk. Do better. Do better.